Today on Rise Up, for over 10,000 years, an ancient enemy has ruled from the shadows, unchecked, unpunished, and deeply embedded in every institution of power. But what if his time has finally run out? In this explosive episode, the Riser exposes the truth behind the one who has orchestrated chaos since the fall of Adam. The hidden architect of governments, religions, and deception itself. From the garden to the ballot box, his grip has only tightened, until now. Discover what the prophets foretold, what the scriptures conceal, and what the world was never meant to understand, until today. This is Rise Up.
Good morning and welcome to Rise Up. I'm Alia Halal.
And I'm Ardian.
And today we're going to be jumping into this incredible lecture that was released recently on the Mahdi Has Appeared channel. And it really was quite something, I think. There's a lot of food for thought in the words of Abu Sodic in that particular lecture.
Yeah, no, it's the lectures of Abu Sodic as a whole, there is a lot of wisdom to extract from it. There's a lot of knowledge. And me and Alex were actually talking about how the knowledge of Abu Sodic comes in a time of uncertainty and confusion, how the masses in the world are trying to understand very, very complex topics and things that are related to the unseen, things that are related to even our worldly life, but it seems like only he is the one who's able to make a firm foundation for all of these different types of knowledge which he's sharing with the people.
No, that's so true, and it's very fascinating that we do find the believers will have certain questions or they'll have certain understandings that they want to verify, and then he'll release this lecture that will kind of answer their questions automatically without even knowing or having been told, I should say, that these individuals had those questions or are wondering about something. So the Spirit is truly talking to the world through Abu Sodic. And the reason we're saying that is because if this is the first time for you watching, we say that God's Holy Spirit is in a man in every day and age. And in this day and age, that individual is the man who was actually prophesied and appointed by Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in his Holy Will and Testament. And that man is Abdullah Hashim Abu Sodic. His name, Abdullah, is found in the will of Prophet Muhammad. And this is quite a time we're in, because this is the time where everyone worldwide is essentially being made aware of the name, the Mahdi, Abdullah Hashim Abu Sodic. And we're hearing it from every kind of person, whether they hate the idea of the Mahdi appearing, whether they love it, whether they're devoted followers who really want to walk by his side and do anything and everything it takes to help the world, or it's people who want to harass and attack and mock. Regardless, everyone is taking his name now and mentioning him, talking about him. He is that topic of the year at the moment. So 2025 has really been quite something when it comes to the publicity of this call and this movement, and it has resulted in tens of thousands of followers that are just growing in number every day. So it's quite an incredible thing. Yeah,
it is an incredible thing. And, this year has been an explosive year in terms of reaching out to the people and people reaching out to us. And I think that this is just a precursor for what is to come. And there is a lot more for the people to see from us and from Abu Sodic from his piece.
And I think that's a great point you raised, Ardian, because there's a lot that is to come. Right? There's so much that's to come, and the episode we're going to delve into today talks about some of these intense prophecies that are attributed to the Qaim of the family of Muhammad or to the riser of the family of Muhammad. And these intense prophecies, we're going to see for ourselves in a bit when we get into the episode what it is that we're referring to, but they are quite something. It's a very unique time. We've never lived in a day and age like this, and the narrations state that the day and age of the Qaim is different from any other time, and this time will never repeat itself. It's very unique. So buckle your seatbelts and let's make sure that we're all taking the opportunities at hand. Let's not, neglect what is in front of us. Let's not be reckless with what we know. Let's try our best to book those tickets to the Ark of Salvation.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. And let's start today's episode with some community posts. Okay, so we're in France here. There's a brother in France putting some stickers up, and I think those are the manifesto ones, aren't they?
Yeah, they look like them. Yeah, with the QR code on the side of it, so anybody who comes across it, they can scan the QR code and be linked to the manifesto or the website that we have.
Awesome. Prophecy of... There we are. I think that's Brother Muhammad from France. Well, he's from Spain, but he's in France. Very nice. Now we're in London. God already chose a leader. That's cool.
Yeah, that's really cool.
On the letterbox.
On both sides of the letterbox too.
On both sides. All right.
All right, cool.
That was a quick shout out to some of our brothers and sisters who've been doing some of the works that they do.
Great job, guys.
We have a lot more right now on the YouTube page that you can go ahead and check out for yourselves. Go to The Mahdi Has Appeared on YouTube and go to the post section to see if your pictures have been put up yet, your missionary work has been highlighted yet, and recognized and acknowledged by Abu Sodic himself, which is quite an honor.
For sure, it's an honor. It's an honor that I think every believer should chase after.
Absolutely. Now we do have some Q&As that we wanted to cover that are from Abu Sodic himself, where he is answering the questions of the believers. So let's get through those as well today. Let's roll the first one.
Brother Ridwan Sunny from Bangladesh wanted to know about a dream interpretation. Here is his dream. He says, I saw Father today as the head of our university and everyone was calling him Imam. A boy asked me to call him as he was sleeping. Then I called him and the VC thought I was calling him and he got angry and the boy was mad at me. But then Father came and led our prayer and it was very unique. Kind of like Salah, but unique. Father's pupils were bright red. In my mind, I said, my beloved, and he heard it and said to everyone, someone is calling me their beloved. Then I woke up. Would it be possible to ask about the meaning of this?
Yeah, so a university is a symbol in dreams of the seventh heaven, or the heaven of the mind, because a university is a place where you go in order to educate yourself or complete your mind. And so a university in the dream world, or in the world of the malakut, the heavenly worlds, would be the highest level. Just like a university is the highest level of education here on earth, the seventh heaven is the highest heaven in the hereafter, in the spirit world. And so this is a glad tidings to the dreamer that he is faith-wise on his way to such a place. And if he remains firm in his position, great goodness awaits him.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. And, this is the Joseph of our time who's able to interpret these dreams. And I congratulate the brother on the dream that he had. And I hope that he continues pursuing in order to reach that final stage.
It's a great motivation. And Brother Ridwan Sunny from Bangladesh is a very great brother who shows and exhibits a lot of faith when he speaks. And I guess in the dream world, God is also establishing that in his favor. So a wonderful dream and a beautiful sign for him. And it's interesting how symbolism works in dreams. You would think that, you wouldn't realize it, you wouldn't know it from yourself that seeing the university means the highest level of knowledge that could be attained right now from the seventh heaven. My goodness, who would have thought? But it does make sense because university level is like the ultimate level, isn't it? It's that extra standard of education that people strive for. So in the spiritual realm, that would be knowledge from the seventh heaven. Makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And only Abu Sodic has been able to make sense out of all of the dreams that comes his way. He's been able to interpret your dreams, my dreams, and the dreams of many believers around the world. And, a lot of them that have to deal with the future even end up coming true, which is fascinating, because if he didn't know the unseen and he's interpreting people's dreams and they're not coming true, then I guess people's faiths would be shaken. But in the case with Abu Sodic, the dreams that you bring to him, he gives you its interpretations and they end up coming true.
Exactly. Like that is kind of, you see it. You see in real time these prophecies being fulfilled or these dreams coming true, as you said. And when you see it happening to you and with you, you can't belie what you're sensing and experiencing for yourself.
Exactly.
Incredible. Let's see if there's any more Q&As that we can play and talk about.
The next question says, who are those mentioned here? And it mentions the verse, واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون in سورة ياسين.
This verse is referring actually to the disciples of Jesus Christ when they were sent to the city of Antioch. Okay? And this is in reference to a very special fitna that took place at a very special time that's mentioned in the book of Galatians in the time of the apostle Peter and the false antichrist Paul. Basically, what had taken place is that Paul had traveled to Antioch, and he was over there, and he was angry, and he went over there with one of his companions. And the reason why he went over there was to confront a couple of the messengers. So these messengers were trying to teach these new believers that in order to complete their faith, they also had to adhere to the Jewish law. They had to circumcise. That circumcision was a part of the Jesuit covenant. Jesus did not abrogate the laws of the Torah, especially not circumcision. Okay? Yes. Paul had a different opinion. Paul proclaimed himself to be a special apostle to the non-Hebrews, to the Gentiles all around the world. He considered that the 11 or 12 apostles that actually met Jesus Christ and lived with him, that these ones were limited only to the Jews, and that he had the task alone to be the supreme authority and messenger to all the rest of mankind. And so he went over there to confront them, and he went over there and he was fighting with them. And so God enforced those disciples by sending them the vicegerent of Jesus Christ, who was Simon Peter. And there are many narrations from the Ahl Bayt alayhim salam that specify that the third one that they are enforced with is Simon Peter. And Simon Peter went over there, and there was a big confrontation between him and Paul, and they differed greatly. And Paul called Peter basically a hypocrite, and he rejected him and said that he was upon falsehood, even though he was the vicegerent of Jesus Christ.
That's some difficult information for someone who might be an avid fan of Paul, but it is not a good mark on your record to be defying the chosen successor of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, Paul might as well have said that to Jesus Christ himself. Because
and he could have, if he had met him, which he didn't even meet him, but imagine if he had met him, he probably would have defied him too.
Yeah, and you know, there's actually a lot of things to say about Paul. I mean, Paul himself, in his own books, actually, in his own writings, openly talks bad about the disciples, especially in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, where he wrote a whole chapter dedicated to talking against the disciples. And even
that's really toxic.
Yeah, and even early church fathers, before Prophet Muhammad was even born, peace be upon him and his family, commentated about Paul's letter, that specific chapter. And they said that the main disciples he was referring to, that he was speaking out against, was Peter, James, and John. So, I mean, you know, that's not really a reliable source.
That's a lot of backbiting happening there.
It is a lot of backbiting.
I remember Peter writing a book about all the bad things he feels about Paul. I mean, that's really not a nice thing to do. Like an entire chapter, really, like just listing down your angst against people.
And what's crazy is, like, Jesus' law was, hey guys, look, love one another just as I have loved you.
So why isn't he doing it?
Exactly. And then you actually don't find the disciples going around with their own gospels talking smack about one another. You know, that's the one thing.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of how in mainstream Islam you have Sunni Islam, and you have this understanding and awareness that companions who had been close once and then went astray later, such as Abu Bakr and Omar, they defy and reject and even attack Imam Ali, who was the chosen successor. And Sunni Muslims and the scholars of Sunni Islam, when they hear that and they talk about it, they say, oh, it's fine, they were just having a disagreement, even though it's quite a heavy thing. I mean, you can't have two sides correct if they're both arguing. Either both are wrong or one is wrong.
Exactly.
And if God has chosen someone as a successor, then clearly that is the way to go. I mean, it shouldn't be that complicated.
Yeah, it shouldn't be that complicated, but unfortunately, due to programming and the teachings of the church fathers and and teachings of the scholars of today, people are accustomed to believe that although both sides hated each other or both sides had problems with one another, they are both right, which doesn't really make any sense.
It doesn't make sense, and it's really belittling God's justice, and it's not the way of the messengers at all. So yeah, I think that this is something that we see happening quite often in mainstream religions, which is an important thing to take note of, and that is that there would be a messenger, such as Jesus, such as Muhammad, peace be upon them both, and they would appoint or anoint a successor and say, this is the man after me, please make sure that you guys listen to him. This is Peter, he is Simon, who is Peter, the rock, who will be the one I build my church upon, or this is Ali, whoever I'm the master of, Ali is the master of. And then their station and their authority that is bestowed upon them by the divine is belittled by the people, and they see it as irrelevant. It's not really necessary to follow them or to obey them or to submit to their words and their teachings. And that's when you see the various sects and denominations breaking off. That's when the offshoots start to be created because people don't know what to do. That's when you hear ideas like sola scriptura, or the book is enough for us, or actually I kind of like what Paul is saying. And then religion begins to morph and change, and it's a big mess. And that's when you end up in your situation that you're in today. If you're someone who calls themselves Christian or Muslim and you say, these guys, meaning us, are wrong, they should be Muslim or they should be Christian, then the problem becomes what kind? Your kind? Because everyone thinks they're on the right track in these denominations. The Sunnis will say that people should be like them, the Shia will say that people should be like them, and even within their sects there are sects. The Christians have the same problem. So then what do? Right? And it's important to realize that there's more out there beyond what you think might be true. There are so many different kinds of Christians and different kinds of Muslims. How do you know your kind is correct? What makes you right? We say that all these different denominations and factions and sects are misguided because they don't have a living messenger with them, and there's meant to be one. There's meant to be a living messenger with the people.
And it's very clear, it's very obvious. I mean, Jesus spoke about prophets, sages, and teachers to come after him.
Exactly.
Prophet Muhammad, through the revelations of the Quran, clearly makes it out that in every age there is a guide. So, I mean, where did this understanding that nothing happens after them come from? I mean, it has to come from the scholars and those who claim to be learned men of religion. It comes
from people who then insist that you obey them.
Yeah, exactly.
Very weird.
Which is, yeah, like, hey, look, there's no prophet after Prophet Muhammad, but you have to obey me as if I am Prophet Muhammad, which is weird.
Very strange. Yeah, no, that doesn't make any sense. I think we do have one more Q&A, just making sure. We did we've had our fill for today. But we can now jump into the episode that we were promising the audience that we would talk about. Let's roll the first clip of the lecture and we'll be right back after.
So today we're going to be speaking about the difference between the climb and between the Messiah.
Okay.
These two concepts, these two characters, the difference between them, and how Islam views this character in particular, and what is his role, and what does he seek to accomplish that's different than the Jewish Messiah or the Christian Messiah, so to speak. And a lot of this has to do with Iblis, Lanatullah alayh, and the story that's been ongoing for a very long time. You see, there's this story that's at the heart of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. This story about how mankind was in this very privileged position, a position of power, a position where man acted as a vicegerent on behalf of God, a position where they were in peace and prosperity and safety and security and walking with God in the garden and being able to command even the angels. Being in a station so high that the angels would prostrate to our forefather Adam. And we, obviously, being the children of Adam, would be the successors of Adam. And so all of that bliss, that place of goodness, that high position, that being close to God and his angels, we want that. We had that. That's what the story of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam is focused around. And it's focused around this notion of the fall, the imperfection of Adam, how our forefather Adam and our grandmother Eve were imperfect by nature. And basically what took place is that even though we had, or our forefathers had, access to all of this goodness and privilege, they still wanted more, and they didn't have the ability to obey God fully. They succumbed to the whispers and the tricks and the deception and the deceit of somebody who didn't have our best interest in mind. This arch nemesis, this evil character, this prosecutor angel. And so we find here the story of us being in that privileged position. There is this spiritual being that is also high in position, high in rank. His name is Iblis, or Lucifer, or Satan. And he envies us for that position which we had attained, or envies Adam, refuses to accept that he is now appointed. And when we bring together all of the apocrypha of Islam and the Gnostic Gospels of Christianity, and we kind of put all of the pieces of the puzzle together, a story emerges, a story of there having been, like the narrations mention, this angel that God uses in order to create the physical universe, because God doesn't do anything directly. He takes the souls of the people that die through the angel of death. He brings down the revelation through the angel Gabriel. He brings down the rain and protects the Israelites through the angel Michael, etc. So he blows through the horn on the day of judgment through the angel Israfil. And so each and every one of the angels act as hands of God, and they carry out the intentions, the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his commandments, his commands, and they allow God to manage the universe indirectly, because he is above coming and going and above all characteristics and attributes, right?
Yes.
And so in that same line of thought, in the narrations of Islam, there's this angel that God uses to, and it's very present, it's there in the narrations. It says that God had this angel create the earth, the physical universe, the earth, and he creates all that which is on earth, which includes obviously the animals and the fish, the birds, the human beings that are on there. And this is also what is mentioned in the Apocrypha of Christianity. There are these archons. There's these rulers of the world that were angels, but they become fallen angels at some point, because basically God commands them to be subservient to Adam once Adam is created, and they don't get this concept, they don't understand it. They're only seeing Adam for his physical form. They cannot see or perceive the light that is in Adam, or that spirit that enters into Adam, and they don't know the origin of that spirit and how that spirit, is basically essentially created from the light of God and in the image of God. They don't understand that. And so they basically rebel. And this rebellion is a great rebellion, according to many narrations. In the Islamic narrations, it's a rebellion of Iblis and all of his seed, his children, his descendants, his wife and his children. In the narrations of Christianity and Judaism, it seems to be a rebellion in which Lucifer takes with him 1/3 of all of the angels. They end up rebelling against the Most High. why did they rebel with this character? Because he was at such a high degree that they loved him. The narrations say that Gabriel and Michael would walk by Iblis and they would say to them, to each other, you know, wow, isn't he so amazing? Isn't he so beautiful? We wish that we could be like him. So that's the status that he was at. There was this extreme love that the angels had for Iblis, that they gave him actually the name Iblis. Iblis was not his birth name. It was not his original name. His original name was Azazil. But they gave him this name Iblis, which really is Ebelis, which is a kunya, which means the father of creation, because Abba means, right? Yes, it means father, and Lis means creation. And so they gave him this nickname because they considered him to be the creator of the physical universe and the physical bodies that they enjoy. And they loved him so much, and he was kind of delegated to the affairs of the universe, right? Yeah. And so he was acting as a god, so to speak. And that's not a foreign concept, and we've had many episodes that have spoken about how there's even these du'as from the Ahl Bayt alayhim salam, in which they say, "O God of gods, O King of kings." And so this concept of there being this ultimate God and these lower gods is very much present and not contradictory to Islam, Christianity, or Judaism. And so, and we spoke about the Elohim, and there's no need to go over it again, but there's an episode on the channel that people can look into.
No, so this is a very mysterious topic, and it's going somewhere quite interesting.
It really is.
Because we began with talking about the Messiah and the Mahdi, and then suddenly it becomes about this character called Iblis. This very fascinating, controversial figure that we don't know that much about. We know some things, you know, the narrations speak about him, the scriptures talk about him, the Apocrypha also mention him quite often and actually give us more information about this character than even the mainstream scriptures do. But Iblis is an interesting personality, and as Abu Sodic explains here, and this might, you know, a lot of people find that uncomfortable, but it's a fact, he is that creator that created the physical. And in that sense, he becomes that person in charge, that person with all that authority and ability in the land. And he, in fact, is said to have been that individual who created Adam with his hands, because the physical formation of Adam himself, it's attributed to that Abalis, that father that was the one who made the physical.
Exactly. And I think the people, if they, you know, just listen to this, yes, for sure, there's a lot of information to digest. It is probably something very difficult for a lot of people to grasp. But nonetheless, if we just trace our steps back to our origin, we can find that all of this is true. Many of the narrations allude to the fact that Iblis was very close to God. Iblis was in the congregation of the angels where he's commanded to prostrate. And he says that the reason why he is not is because he sees that he's created out of fire, where Adam is made from clay. And so we have this understanding that Iblis is knowledgeable. He understands the physicalities of things. He understands God to a great extent, because he's able to even speak to God directly. Exactly. It's not like he's out of the picture. He's in the congregation of the angels. So that says a lot. And, you know, for people to not have this understanding that an angel appointed by God can commit great works and great acts through the permission of God, well, I don't think that they need to look any further than Islam or Christianity or Judaism, because you'll find that many angels are tasked with various different jobs.
Yes.
For example, you have the angel of death. You know, the Muslims, they always say, hey, you know, we are to God and to God we return, and God's going to take our souls and God causes us to die. And the Quran says, you know, God is the one who causes you to die and resurrects you, then causes you to die again. But this act of actually taking the soul of the individual, the actual person in charge of that, the actual work in charge of that, is not God himself. God himself is not actually coming and going. You know, God is far beyond the attribute of coming and going, because now he has limitations. Why wasn't he there already? You know, isn't he supposed to be omnipresent? You know, all these things. But the fact of the matter is that you have an angel, you know, the angel of death, or Azrael, who takes the souls after they're passing away. And there's an angel for many, many things, and this is what the Jews talk about. There's an angel for dreaming, there's an angel for death, there's an angel for fertility.
I mean, the narrations state that there's an angel on every blade of grass that exists.
Exactly.
And, you know, like there.
I mean, he talked about the subatomic angels and...
subatomic angels. I mean, it's an interesting topic, it really is. But Iblis was given that name Azazel, or Azazel. He was the beloved of God. He was a very powerful entity that was able to create. And there's this notion, in general, in the mainstream, that it's wrong to say that anyone can create other than God, or it's wrong to say that anyone can have divine authority other than God. But that's the thing. God himself is the Lord of Lords. He's the King of Kings, the God of Gods. And that's something that, as controversial as it might sound, what it essentially means is he is the ultimate authority. God himself, God the Almighty, there is no greater being than him. And he's the one who does bestow ability upon his own creation to create and to do what they do. Jesus Christ was made by God, and he was able to create birds out of clay. So this is something that is agreed upon. And it is, I think, a shock to those who don't want to admit to themselves that there is that much power in a being that turned out to be quite evil in the end.
Yeah, but you know,
So
after...
it's an intimidating idea, I guess.
It is an intimidating idea. I think everybody doesn't like to believe or come to grasp that the person who created this world was actually an evil entity. But the thing is that what we have to consider is that, well, if he was always evil, why did God have him in the congregation of the angels? Why did God have him in his close proximity?
Exactly.
You know, so we have to actually understand that Iblis was not always evil. Iblis was a worshiper of God. Even the narrations would say that he worshipped God for, what, 6,000, 7,000 years, and they're not sure if it's earthly years or heavenly years. So, I mean, that's a big deal. And for him to be allocated the task of creation or creating makes absolute sense. Even Ahmed al-Hassan from MSPs actually said the word Iblis was originally Abbalis.
Right.
And Abbalis is basically Abba and Lis, which is the father of creation. So Lis is like this very, very ancient word.
Archaic kind of
Yeah,
language.
archaic kind of word that actually was talking about creation. So basically the Arabs would understand it that Iblis is Abul Khalq. He is the father of creation. And that is a name that God gave him, and that is a name that we actually find really in the Quran in that sense, because people weren't really able to make sense as to, like, why was he called Iblis? Why is his name Iblis?
What's the root origin of the name? Like, where does it come from? And it's because it's actually a name that kind of was created from two words that were put together in a title that was given to him by the angels that revered and honored him so much because of his great station and how pious he was, and how much he would worship God, and how devoted he was.
And how much they loved him, really.
And they adored him because he was so beautiful in their eyes. He was so magnificent. He was so honored. But that's the thing. It's a very tragic story of the condition of an angel, not the human condition really, the angelic condition, I guess, but the condition of a being that is on their way to a great place, but certain vices come into play that we are not meant to have. Vices such as arrogance, such as believing you know better, such as talking back to God or suggesting something. And it's a very deep story that we only know the surface of, really. And one day, hopefully, we can know more from Abu Sodic, from him his peace. But at the moment, what we do know is that Iblis was that creator of the physical realm. He was that entity that had that divine authority. And he refused to prostrate to Adam, which led to a lot of bad things happening. But now, at this point in the lecture, Abu Sadiq is taking us somewhere. So let's see what else he mentions about the topic.
And so for 10,000 years, ever since the rebellion and the refusal to prostrate, Iblis requests more time, basically. He says, give me more time. Don't punish me right now to God, when God questions him and asks him, why did you refuse to prostrate? Why? And he says, because I'm better than him. You created me from fire. You created him from clay. I'm the one who, essentially is his physical creator, and I don't want to prostrate. And then he asks God to grant him some respite, which God does. And he grants him respite until Yawm al-Waqt al-Ma'loom, or Yawm al-Qiyamah, the day of the appointed time that only God knows when that time is, or the day of the Qiyam. And this day was understood by some Muslims to be the Day of Judgment in the hereafter. And it was understood by the Shia to be the day of the resurrection, or the day of the Raja, or the day of the rise of the Qa'im. So it's a day that's in this physical world. And so from the time of Adam all the way until the time of the Qa'im, right, or until the time of the Day of Judgment, for the Muslims, Iblis is not in a state of torment. He's not chained away. He's not being punished. He's not banished from the earth. He had already been banished once from the Garden of Eden alongside with Adam and Eve, but right now he's running freely.
Yeah.
And the narrations state that.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite alarming, but yes, it is absolutely, it's true, according to the scriptures, that Satan, or at least even the Bible itself, states that the devil had this sort of power, or maintained this sort of power. Like in the book of Job, it mentions that he was going in between the earth and the heavenly realm. So he's like communicating God, and God actually still allows him to have power over, the earth in these stories. And it's quite alarming, but it's true. It's all there in the scripture.
So yeah, in the story of Job, as it's there in the scripture, you see him acting as a prosecutor. So he's constantly trying to get mankind in trouble.
Yeah.
He's constantly doing bad things to them. He's bringing down ailments and illnesses upon Job. He is killing his family. He's destroying his fields and his crops and his properties, and he's bringing down storms, and he's doing all kinds of havoc and chaos. So obviously, like, he has tremendous power over the elements of nature and the weather and the world and its affairs. We find also very clearly that in the New Testament, in the scene of the temptation of Christ, and we've mentioned this many times, where Satan, during his temptation of Jesus, he basically offers him authority or kingship over the world, and if he would only prostrate to him, thereby showing that Iblis has the power to appoint people into positions of rulership over the different countries of the world, and that in his hand are the affairs of politics, essentially, and kingship. Jesus refuses to do so, and in response to that, what does Iblis do? Iblis basically, instead of giving him kingship over the world, he gives him the cross. And so this shows that there is immense power in the hands of Iblis, and that since the time of Adam all the way till this day and age, he has essentially been continuing, because that's what respite is. When somebody's asking for additional time before they are prosecuted for a particular case, right, or judgment comes upon them, what's the point of the time unless they continue to do on earth what they were doing before? Right? And there are many narrations from the Ahl Bayt alayhim salam that speak about how Iblis and his Shia, his children, his seed, his descendants are walking up and down the streets, walking through the markets, teaching the people about religion, standing on the pulpits of the churches and the synagogues and the mosques, and that they're leading people astray, and that the non-working scholars are his descendants and his children that pose as teachers of religion, and that these teachers of religion in the end time, that their point is to misguide people, and that they're actually demons that are related and servants of Iblis that existed from the time of Solomon, etc. So here you have proof from the narrations that Iblis is in control of politics and kingship and the affairs of the world powers and governments. And this is what is evident in the New Testament. We also have him being it's very evident in the narrations of the Ahl Bayt that he also is in control of the religious institutions. And so he's in control of the elements of the weather and killing people, and he's in charge of religion, he's in charge of government, he's in charge of everything.
Yeah. I mean, it's so scary and alarming to hear it like that, but yeah, it's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. Even his spirit enters into people, you know, as it did with Judas, and he has like tremendous influence on every level, the individual level and at every level of power in the world.
Yes. And that's an interesting point that you bring up. Him having the ability to enter into people and, control affairs and things through that way. And I think that is what people envision when they, as you can see on this famous painting here that's on the screen, there is this image which is, obviously it's a depiction of the Antichrist. And here we have one of the hands of the Antichrist being the hand of Iblis to signify or signal the fact that Iblis enters into the Antichrist and kind of controls him. And you can see him whispering into the ear of the Antichrist. And so he has these proxies on earth. He has the ability, obviously, in the Quran for him to run through the veins of mankind and possess them, him and his children. And his children, according to the narrations, they outnumber the children of the Adamites. For every 10 children that he has, there's one Adamite that is born. And so they're more in number, and they're focused on maintaining control and power for Iblis.
My goodness.
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack, and I think it's a shock for a lot of people that Iblis actually is not just a fallen angel or a demonic force that whispers, but he is a force that actually has a lot of authority and power.
And he's actively involved in our lives in a very big way that people don't really see. And I think that is exactly the thing that we need to highlight, Ardian, is that, like you said, it's not just that there's this idea, right, that the devil or Satan or Iblis is just kind of lurking in the shadows and whispers into people's ears things like, why don't you tell a lie?
Why don't you drink?
Maybe you should go out and just not pray today. And this is the idea that people have of Iblis, that's his kind of his role is to kind of just come into your ear and whisper ideas, and you're like, oh, that's a good idea, maybe I should break my fast before the time. And this is this kind of, I would say it's like a perspective that you're looking at things through these rose-tinted glasses about the devil. It's actually much more insidious than that, much more sinister. His plan is a lot more malicious, because that which people expect, which is just that he's going to tell you in your ear, hey, don't smile today at people, don't give charity. I mean, that's really not his goal. This guy has some big aims. That he has.
Extremely huge ambitions. So imagine an entity that is on the earth for thousands of years, and he's not
created the earth.
Yeah, and created the earth, and you're telling me that his only ambitions is to whisper to you to not pray and fast. I mean,
it's more than that, guys.
Yeah, and it is. And I think when we look at the world from when we look at the world, what do we find? We find that the world is in chaos. The world is filled with injustice. It's filled with suffering. It's filled with people who are, sleeping in graveyards, like in the case with many poor people in Egypt. It's filled with 25,000 people who are dying on a day-to-day basis due to starvation. And the very fact that Abu Sodic is able to point out through scripture that Iblis has power, that God invested him with, and that was when Iblis had said, hey, give me some time, give me time. Don't punish me yet. It seems like God enabled Iblis to still retain these authorities and powers. That's why in the book of Job, you find that he's able to harm Job and harm his crops and harm his children and family. And you'll even find that clearly in the scene in which Jesus goes out for 40 days in order to fast, Iblis makes it very clear. He says, all of this I'm going to give you. You just have to fall down and prostrate to me. So what does that mean? It's very clear that if he's going to be offering Jesus something, it's not because he has nothing to offer. It wouldn't be a temptation if the devil actually didn't have anything to offer. But clearly, he's saying, look, this is your temptation. You want to be the Christ. You want to be the king of the world because that's what God sent you for. I can make the job easier for you.
I can give it to you right now.
I can give it to you right now, but you just have to prostrate to me.
And Jesus doesn't respond and say, no, you're lying. You don't have the authority to give me anything and you're not able to do that. This is deception. He says, no, I don't want it actually. Like in that way. But he doesn't belie Jesus' offer. And that's the thing. The devil's offer.
The devil's offer.
And that's the problem here. People think that the devil is just this lying kind of whispering guy that walks around. Abu Sodic made it very clear that he is the one who walks through the marketplaces amongst the people talking about religion. Teaching people
That's
religion.
Scary.
That is scary, but doesn't it make sense though?
It
like
does.
if you were in the shoes of Iblis, right, and you're telling God that I'm going to misguide as many of them as I can, and you have this horrifying, horrible, dishonoring vendetta against goodness and righteousness and God, and you're saying to God, I'm going to sit on the straight path and I'm going to misguide whoever walks on this narrow straight path. You wouldn't then be invested in people who are going to nightclubs or people who are committing murder. All these people are doing that. They're already in that darkness. But this entity who's saying, I'll sit on the straight path and misguide the people, he is clearly going to deceive them as a wolf in sheep's clothing, just as Jesus Christ said. And that's what Iblis does. He takes on those offices and those stations and roles of being this knowledgeable, religious individual who knows very much and you don't know anything, and he's here to guide you and teach you. And you can't, and that's the problem. You can't distinguish now, because how will you know? How will you know which scholar is good or not good when all of them, or most of them who are non-working at least, or who are being hypocritical, are not calling towards God. They're not calling towards allegiance to God. They're saying, just follow these rituals and you'll be good. But that's not enough for God.
No, for sure, right? It's not enough for God. I mean, Iblis was the one practicing the rituals better than anybody. Iblis, he even said to God, he said, look, God, please don't let me fall down in prostration to Adam. If you take this and remove this from me, I will worship you the worship that nobody has ever worshipped you before. So he is a worshiper of God. He's a lover of God. That's why he was given the name Azazullah or Azazel, because he was dearly beloved by God, because he loved God. So, I mean, if the people actually just consider Iblis's history, consider his names, what he was attributed with, they cannot run away from the fact that he is who he is. He was very close. He is very powerful. He is very knowledgeable. However, despite all of that, his grand mistake was disobeying God in terms of the appointment of Adam. And that's how Iblis is misguiding people. He's not misguiding people by going up on the pulpit with horns and saying, with a pitchfork saying, hey, Islam is false and Prophet Muhammad is false.
Let's be bad together,
Let's be bad together.
He's not going to say that.
No, he's not. He's going to make it look very, very interesting. He's going to make it look very, very lovable. So he comes and he says, hey, look, he comes to the Muslims, right? Hey, look, guys, Islam is the perfect religion. We don't need anything. We have the Quran and it's enough.
Everything you need, even though you're all disagreeing with one another. You're all Muslims, and that's okay. And all of you have a different understanding of Islam, but it doesn't matter. Who cares about that? You don't need an imam. You don't need a guide. Just follow your heart and do whatever you feel is right. And that is a horrifying idea. That is a very chaotic idea that leads to anarchy, that leads to rebellion. No one knows what they're doing. It's like leaving children in a house without a parent or a guardian and saying, you kids are fine. You can cook, you can turn on the stove, and you can use the washing machine, and you can iron your clothes all by yourselves. You 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, you don't need mom and dad in the house. You know how mom and dad said you need a parent or guardian? Don't listen to them. Just do it on your own.
And look at how the Middle East turned out after following that kind of rule. It's kind of like, as you said, it's kind of like related to the household. If the guardian of the household is not there, the kids are going to ruin the house. I mean, it's going to look like a horror scene. And that's what the Middle East looks like today. Instead of it looking like gardens in which rivers can flow in trees with abundant fruits, there's nothing in the Middle East. It is a wasteland of terror and tyranny. and people doing very, very, very weird things behind the scenes in these countries.
Oh, and in front of the
unfortunately.
scenes, I mean, they're all over the place.
All
I
over
think
the
that's
place.
another thing that Abu Sodic mentions there. He says religiously, so he's taken on that religious role. He's that wolf in sheep's clothing that looks like he's innocent or looks like he's got a nice turban or a nice beard, so he must be on the right path, but he's not. He's that wolf in sheep's clothing that Jesus Christ already warned you about. And he's also politically involved.
Yeah, he really
You
is.
find him in the political sphere as well. And it reminds me of the fact that it's so known, right, Aryan? Like, they don't even belie it, they don't even deny it. If you remember the late popes, the late so-called popes, words that came in the headlines where he was talking about the elections, the general elections in the United States. And what does he say? He says he advises his congregation to pick the lesser of two evils. So he acknowledged that the candidates were in the category of evil.
Yeah,
And he's saying pick the lesser of them.
This was something that I thought to myself, how can any person who says that the Pope is infallible, or that he is supposed to be on the seat of Peter, he's supposed to be a representative of Christ, how can he say, hey, pick the lessers of two evil? I mean, that's like Jesus Christ saying, hey, look, either pick Herod or Caesar. You know, pick but like, I don't know which one is okay. I don't know which one is the best candidate.
I won't tell you, even though that's my job, is to guide you.
But like, pick the lesser of the two evil that you think
Figure it out.
Yeah, you figure it out, basically.
And it's a gamble, and it's okay to hope for the best after taking that giant risk that could end up in millions of lives being taken in a world war or something along those lines happening. People starving, for example, people getting homeless. So many bad things have happened to the world because of those notions. But the idea is that one religious person, the late so-called Pope Francis, advises that you pick the lesser of two evils who are also in politics. So both sides are acknowledging that these realms have evil in them. And that's very odd, you know, like that's a very strange thing to admit, but let's open our eyes and look at it for what it is. Evil is Satan, evil is Iblis. You don't have evil separate from Iblis, it is the same thing. That's anything that is not with God or for God or from God is the devil. And there are people who think there's a middle ground, there's a gray area. There's no gray area, it is black or white.
You know, and it kind of brings me back to this understanding again about the supremacy of God, and how one of the proofs that the Qur'an comes with is he revives matters that were lost. One matter that was lost is this idea that God is the one who chooses a ruler.
Exactly.
And this idea, the supremacy of God, which we find in all Abrahamic faiths. And yet we find that the leaders of the Abrahamic faiths today are not calling towards the appointment of God, but they're calling towards the appointment of mankind for mankind.
Exactly. No, absolutely right. I mean, this is something that became totally eradicated. And this is what the devil wanted, isn't it? He didn't want people to think about Adam. He said, don't think about Adam, don't prostrate to Adam, do whatever you can to not, you know, comply with that particular teaching. Do everything else, because he said, I'll do everything, but I just won't do that. Until today, that is the religion of Iblis. Do everything, do anything. Have no religion, have a great religion. Just follow every ritual in the book, but don't obey the man appointed. And that's the only thing he's obsessed with. And that's the only thing he tries to misguide people from. Let's continue the episode, see what else is said about that and how it ends. I mean, it's a very incredible ending, so let's go along with it.
So now in Christianity and Judaism, you have them waiting for the coming of the Messiah. And the Messiah is supposed to be this figure that basically brings justice and equity and peace and prosperity on the earth, ruling over the nations, ensuring basically that God is the ruler, God is the king. So the Messiah's role is to rule in the place of the devil, right? And in the place of every false tyrannical king and government that exists on the earth. And the Jews, from our perspective, and certainly from the perspective of the Christians, They missed this opportunity. They missed this opportunity because their Messiah came to them over 2,000 years ago, and they didn't recognize that that was the Messiah. They rejected that that was the Messiah. They chose to elect that the Romans crucify the Messiah. They hated the Messiah, and they hated his person. And
they stuck to the scholars. They rejected him completely.
Exactly. The scholars totally rejected the Messiah, and that led to the death of the Messiah. Now, the Christians that came, they, in order to explain that the Messiah is still Jesus, but he didn't really rule on the earth, and that kind of contradicts the whole point of the coming of the Messiah in the first place, they had to kind of come up with an explanation for that. And so followers of Christianity, after the passing of Jesus Christ onwards, they began to develop this kind of narrative that would explain this phenomenon. And they made that the role of the Messiah would shift from being one where he's supposed to snatch away the affairs of this world from that evil devil, to being somebody who is basically coming down to the earth in order that he may be crucified, so that people can,
be sinless.
Basically be sinless and receive eternal life. And that Jesus' kingdom, or the Messiah's kingdom, is actually one of the hereafter.
Yes,
and
exactly.
this becomes a little bit problematic in the views of the Jews and the Muslims. Now, the Jews, they mock this concept, and they reject this idea and this notion, and they see that the very death of Jesus itself is proof of the falsehood of Jesus and the fallacy of Christianity. And they say that if this is the case, then the Jews should be thanked for their act of crucifying Christ. They should be thanked for their rejection of Christ, because by the logic of the Christians, they are the ones who are responsible for them receiving eternal salvation.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I've actually never heard that statement before.
Oh, they say it all the time. It's quite a famous argument.
It's offensive, to be honest. But
yeah. And so they see that this kind of belief does not make sense, and they see that his absence and the fact that he hasn't returned for 2,000 years, it's a sign basically that the Christians are astray, and that Jesus is not from God. And I think their hopes are that these Christians will eventually one day wake up and stop believing that man is God, and that they'll come back to the straight path, or embrace Judaism one day, or support the Jewish people and the Jewish state, and recognize and see that all of the prophecies in Isaiah and in these other places in the Bible, that these are mistranslations and misinterpretations, and that these they interpret them to be basically about the Jewish people themselves, and that eventually the Christians will come to accept the superiority of the Jewish people and their law, and that they're the ones that are chosen to be above all of the nations. The Muslims come with a very interesting perspective on this all. And their perspective is very simple. It's very attractive. It's very sensible. They say what? They say, look, guys, as far as the Jews go, you're very wrong. You guys have not received a prophet or a messenger or a Messiah for thousands of years. You rejected the prophets and the messengers. You killed not only And did you kill John the Baptist by beheading them, but you also killed Zechariah, and by your own admissions, you guys brutally tortured and killed many of the messengers of God and many of the righteous people that were sent to you. And so obviously you guys also missed the ball on Jesus, the Messiah. He clearly was the Messiah. You guys rejected him. But it's also not as the Christians are stating. So basically the Muslims are saying what? They're saying that the fact that you guys are left without anybody and you are also exiled from the land proves our point, and that point is that, your Messiah was Jesus and that you missed it, okay? But they say that it's also not as the Christians state it to be. Or that Jesus was God, or that the point of the sending forth or the coming of Jesus is to die for the salvation of mankind. This is a false idea, they say. Right. They say there is this concept of fida, or ransoming, in the religion of Islam. There is this concept. The messenger in every time can carry upon his shoulder additional burdens and weight by tolerating the mistakes of his people. And oftentimes this leads to the death of that particular prophet or messenger. And yes, the death of that prophet or messenger would ransom or make up for or cause for God to forgive his Shia or his followers in that particular age. But this idea that anybody who believes in Jesus dying on the cross forever would receive eternal salvation is a false one, and it solves actually nothing. It doesn't even make sense. It's like Jesus came, he has a ministry for 3 years, and then he goes away, and we're supposed to believe that, okay, our kingdom is in the next world. Well, then what's the point of us being here? What was the point of the Messiah? What's the point of the prophecies from the previous prophets and messengers? What's the point of the work of the previous prophets and messengers who were all paving the way and wanting and wishing for justice to be established on earth? Well, they should have just said from the very beginning, oh, believers, be silent, be quiet, allow Iblis to control and rule over this universe, and obey every tyrannical government and king that comes to place, and don't ever seek to even do any sort of goodness on earth. Just die.
Yeah,
that's
just
all.
Don't worry about it.
Not just don't worry about it. Just come and die, please. Just die until the Messiah comes. And after the Messiah comes, just be quiet, and you will, in the end, achieve eternal salvation. They see it as damaging. It's a damaging creed, and it's a creed that has no goodness in it, and it actually causes people to be subservient to evil, and it causes people to feel relaxed and to not want to do any good or change anything in the world, because they're comfortable with the fact that in the end, they're not going to have to pay for any sins, because they simply believe in somebody who died on the cross 2,000 years ago.
So that's an interesting point that Abu Sodic raised, where he says that the Jews would say basically that if you think that Jesus is supposed to die for your sins and that was the point of the Messiah, then that's what ended up happening, right? In terms of, I guess that's their way of saying why would the Messiah be in that role? Because the Messiah is meant to rule. The Messiah is meant to be that king. He's meant to have that ministry that lasts for a while and establish a kingdom of heaven on earth, which we know did not happen with Jesus Christ because it's a crucifixion event. So, yeah, there is controversy there. And then you also have, of course, the Muslims saying to the Jews, well, you're still waiting for your Messiah, where is he? There's a lot of different points of contention that are picked up on and we talked about this before, that the Messiah, Jesus Christ, is a very controversial character for all three Abrahamic faiths, and he seems to be this character that's divisive in what really happened to him and who he really was and what his reality is, right? Yeah, and it's interesting to note that it seems like this whole matter of Jesus was a matter that the Jews initially did not accept. Actually, till this day, they don't accept. And yes, as you were saying, and as Abu Sodic mentioned clearly, that, since they don't see him as a Messiah and they see that he didn't accomplish anything,
they even turn to the Christians and saying, well, actually, you should see us as heroes because you're saying that the Messiah was meant to come and get crucified and die. The only ones who managed to do it were not the disciples of Jesus. It was the Pharisees. It was the Sanhedrin of the Jews that said, hey, go and crucify the Messiah.
Exactly.
And by the way, the Jews, they have a very interesting idea of the Sanhedrin. They say that the Sanhedrin, when the elders do come together to have a ruling, the Holy Spirit is
Descends upon them,
descends upon them and gives a just and true, verifiable ruling. They believe that it is a verified stamp of approval from God or the Holy Spirit or the Shekinah. So, that's the understanding of the Jews. And now the Christians also fall under this as well. They accept Jesus Christ to be the Messiah. Yes, we believe that they over-exaggerated upon his rank. But now they themselves also have a Sanhedrin of people. Instead of going back to the one appointed by God to know who the next pope or the next successor should be.
What are we progressing on? Like, it's always the same kind of template that people end up following. So what changes?
I mean, nothing is really changing because people are following somebody who is not appointed by God.
Exactly.
The Jews for the past 2,000 years have not had a prophet sent to them. The Christians are, head over heels that there's nobody after Jesus, that Jesus is the Alpha and the Omega.
Despite the fact that the Catholics do believe that the Pope is anointed by the Spirit and he's actually that guide and that leader, but still they say, no, it's fine. After Jesus, no one is sent.
It doesn't make any sense.
Itself very much.
Yeah, so the Catholics are now confused, and I think they're only confused because when we brought up the argument, now they retract their whole statement of the papal infallibility and the papal representation of Christ, and they're like, hey, look, there's no representatives of Christ. The Pope is just, we don't know anymore. So it's just strange. And the same thing with the Muslims as well. The Muslims, they fell into the same hole as the Jews and the Christians that, look, guys, after Prophet Muhammad, there's nobody. Yes, you guys have your differences of caliphs and imams, but at the end of the day, look, we're all Muslims, as you were saying. And look, the Quran also is enough for us. So, we might as well just put our faces in the book, which is going to destroy us. Thank you very much for that.
Aryan, I think that there's a difference between what religion is really about, which Abu Sodic has brought forward, and what people think it's about. So people think that religion, in the mainstream, is about being taught certain things, how to live, what's right and wrong, and then you let go and you say, now you go ahead and you live your life.
So basically like rules and rituals.
Rules and rituals. Like the messenger has to come and basically tell you, so they've turned religion into driving a car. It's like, this is how you drive, so this is what this does, you hold the wheel this way. Once you know how to do it, you're on your own, well done. You can take that L stamp that's on your windshield, you can take off the sticker now. You're not a learner anymore, you're a driver. Well done. You passed the test. They see religion to be like that. And then if you mess up or if you forget something, you can always open the manual and just check again. And that's good enough. This is what people think religion is. Abu Sodic says that religion is authentically and always has been the idea that supremacy belongs to God and that allegiance is to God and that God will send someone to take care of the congregation, of the flock, of the people, and that person will always be, there will always be one person or some person in every day and age. So you're not going to be given, that driving seat place and told, now you can drive the car. The car will always be driven by God, and religion is about understanding that the man in the driving seat has to be sent by God. That's the point of religion that Iblis didn't like. He said, I want to be in the driving seat. I don't want Adam to be in there. I want to be in there. And Abu Sodic says, no, God did not appreciate that from Iblis, and God will not appreciate that from people today. So how do you view religion? Because if for you it's about just being taught how to be a good person, that Jesus says, turn the other cheek. Now that I know that I don't need Jesus anymore, and I don't need a prophet or a messenger after Jesus, I'm good. I know exactly how to run my life. Well, isn't that very similar to what the devil said when it came to prostrating to Adam?
Very similar, and that's why we know for a fact that, and this brings us back to our earlier discussion, that the temptation of the devil is not, hey, go and drink and go and do this and go and do that. It seems like actually the temptation of the devil is more deceiving. It is, do the rituals. He whispers to you, do the rituals.
Feel good about yourself.
Feel good about yourself doing the rituals. Pray 5 times a day, right? Okay, like, were these rituals at one point true? Yes, they were true. But the moment that you obey a whisper that says, hey, go and cut off the head of Imam al-Hussein, and hey, don't worry, even though what you did was bad and you regret it, look, just pray 5 times a day, fast in the month of Ramadan, stop remembering al-Hussein, it was a mistake, just get over it, and just continue with your day-to-day rituals and practices and day-to-day life. That is extremely deceiving.
Very, very much so.
Yeah,
and it's quite the trick. It really is quite the trick. Imagine you tell someone, hey, you're very religious, well done, you're wearing the right clothes, you're doing all these prayer rituals, you're obeying the dietary laws, you're not eating pork, well done. That's all you need to worry about. Don't worry about who's leading you. Don't worry about who you're supposed to be following. That doesn't matter. It's not important. That's exactly the religion of Iblis.
Yeah, no, it really is the religion of Iblis. And it's so weird. It's so weird for the people to think that you don't need a man appointed by God. Because essentially then the biggest people who really follow rituals to the T and are so obsessed with rituals and laws are the Jewish people. The Jewish people are very, very much so more obsessed with the laws and the jurisprudence, more so I think than the Muslims are. And for the most part, if we were to say that, look, a prophet is not needed any longer so long as you're still following the laws and rituals, well then the Jews have a better say than the Muslims have.
Fair enough,
they can easily say now, like, look, whether Jesus is the Messiah or not, we don't really know. Well, he's not here today, right? So, like, why should I even bother becoming Christian if Jesus is not here today?
What's the benefit for them, according to them? And you know what's so fascinating? It's like, at the end of the day, all these laws and rituals that they're following, I mean, okay, as you said, you're saying salvation comes for them by following these laws and rituals. And Muslims say that too, but like, as you said, to a lesser degree. At the end of the day, it's not working.
It isn't.
It's not working out for anyone at the moment. So let's see what it is that's being proposed by Abu Sodic, and if there is an actual alternative to these broken systems that are clearly not working for people and actually causing more damage than good. Let's go on to the next clip.
And then they go and say, the Muslims say that, and in actuality, there are these gospels, there are these apocryphal texts that mention from Christianity, not even from Islam, from Christianity that predate Islam, that state that Jesus was not even crucified on the cross, actually, that he managed to escape. That somebody else was crucified in his place, and that is the narrative that we choose to adopt. That's the narrative that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said is the true narrative, and therefore there is no such thing as salvation because of the cross, actually, and the cross needs to be broken because it's pointless.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you bring up extremely important points that everybody who as a Christian should, contemplate over. The fact that there are these extremely problematic logical flaws in Christianity. It doesn't make sense that Jesus was the Messiah, and yet the Messiah, there was really no point to sending a Messiah because he was supposed to be this culmination. He was obviously meant to play this pivotal role. He was supposed to establish the kingdom of God, just like he said many times throughout the Gospels. And the Muslim perspective on it, where yes, this was the role that he was meant to play. He was meant to do these things, but change happened, and change happened for these reasons. And he was the Messiah, but it was actually the fault of the Jewish people who rejected him, that the kingdom of God was not established in his time. But the message of God continued on, and Prophet Muhammad actually corrected the flaws that had been established throughout time regarding the narrative of Christianity. I think that it makes a lot of sense, if you think about it from a logical perspective, that Prophet Muhammad actually came and he shed light on what Jesus' actual mission and purpose was.
Absolutely. And now we come to the concept of, okay, well, then what is Islam going to do about it? Like, now what? All right, so Jesus is he wasn't crucified on the cross. The Savior has to come in order to do this. The Messiah was supposed to do that. He didn't do that. Okay, now what? Muhammad also, they say, didn't do that. So who's supposed to do that, or what's the end of this story? And that's where Islam comes in to answer all of those questions and the narrations of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. And they have this character that was prophesied to come, whose name is the Qa'im, the riser. And he has this name of being the riser for several reasons. And the narrations, they basically speak about these reasons. One of the reasons is because he rises with the truth, or he rises against all of injustice and oppression and tyranny. He leads a revolution on the planet in the end time. One of the names or one of the reasons why he's called the riser is because, according to the narrations, he rises after his death. And right, so there's this resurrection concept, which is a whole nother topic, which we're going to do, me and you, an episode about it, inshallah. But the character of the Qa'im, it is mentioned that he is the one whom finally accomplishes what the people before were unable to accomplish, and that is the establishment of a divine just state. So he essentially leads a coup d'etat on the earth, where he's able to defeat and overthrow the rule of the demiurge and to topple Satan and to pull him off of his throne and to either sit on the throne himself or place somebody who is worthy of sitting on the throne on top of the throne. And now God, through his chosen, will rule on the earth in the place of the devil. And the devil has his judgment day, his time in which he was, he was allotted to that Yawm al-Waqt al-Ma'loom, that known day, that day of the resurrection or the day of the rise. And so the narrations from Muhammad and the family of Muhammad state that actually the devil, he is allotted a time period until the rise of the Qa'im. And when the Qa'im rises, the narration states that he is the one who murders, kills, assassinates Iblis himself. So the character of the Qa'im acts as a hitman of God that was sent into the earth with the sole mission and purpose to eliminate the devil himself, to assassinate him. That's the mission that God gave him, and to ensure that his entire empire crumbles. And once he's assassinated, the power that was given to all of the world leaders begins to fade and fall away, and government after government is toppled, and in their place the chosen of God, or the elect, the meek, inherit the earth. And the narration states very clearly that it's one day in the masjid of Kufa, and Iblis is gathered with all of his Shia, and the Qa'im has a confrontation with him at some point, and he's trying to escape, and the Qa'im grabs the Satan, the Lucifer, Iblis, by his forelock, by his hair at the front of his head, and he basically decapitates him. And that is the day of Iblis's reckoning that takes place. And so the mission of the Qa'im is very clear, and it's very precise, and it's a mission that has to do with the restoration of justice on earth in this physical material universe. Yeah. And that's a mission that's very different to the one that the Christians portray Jesus as having come to establish, which is a kingdom in a different world, a parallel dimension, or the hereafter.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes sense that, of course, this reckoning would have to happen with the devil in order for justice and equity to be established on the earth, just as it had been filled with tyranny and injustice, like the narration state. So, of course, the devil cannot be in power anymore. This has to be that time when his respite is done.
Exactly.
And I think that's a very, very shocking revelation for the people that, the Mahdi, when he brings justice and equity into the world, it's not that he pushes away the Dajjal, and then suddenly he's able to spread justice and equity into the world. He uproots that injustice and tyranny which invaded the world through the man that implanted the first seed of discord and the seed of deception, and that's Iblis himself. And the narrations state that the Qa'im is the one who ends the life of Iblis, thus ushering in a new age, an age of justice, peace, prosperity, knowledge, the age in which God now rules after 10,000 years of the devil ruling. I mean, I think this is a fascinating revelation, Aliyah, that I think this probably took a lot of people aback, and I don't think the Muslim mind or the Christian mind or the Jewish mind can comprehend that. Wow, so Iblis, it's not just like, oh, end of the world happens and then Iblis goes to hell. It's, well, actually he's confronted, he's fought against, and he is essentially killed according to the narrations.
I mean, this is incredible, and the narrations have had it in them that the Qa'im, you know, he faces off with Iblis, and there has to be that face-off, there has to be that confrontation, and there has to be that moment that mankind needs, where all of these terrible things that have happened in the world, and all the misguidance and the confusion and the needless bloodshed and the pain and the suffering, it can be linked back to a very simple concept, and that is that God was not ruling. God was not on the throne. God being on the throne simply in our hearts and just us feeling good about Him and remembering Him when it pleases us, this is not religion. Religion is about obeying God to the fullest. And you cannot obey God to the fullest while you have another master. And this is why the whole concept of religion was eradicated by Iblis, and that ensued so much suffering and so much pain and oppression. And this has to be reconciled now, which is something that the Qa'im comes and does. And I guess it's going to be a very interesting fulfillment of prophecy, and we'll see how it turns out and what that even means. Let's make sure I think we need to make sure we finish this episode
we have to
on time and today to the fullest. Let's hope so. I hope we can get through it. I think there's a little bit left. Let's go to the next clip.
And the Qa'im also, according to the narrations, he's kind of also a forerunner to the second coming of Jesus Christ. And so he actually works in cooperation with Jesus. He's never an enemy of Jesus's. He's actually an ally of Jesus. And his whole purpose is to come acting as a forerunner to Jesus, establishing a divine just state, assassinating the devil that was responsible for the arrest and plot to crucify Jesus Christ. And his purpose is to allow Jesus Christ to rise on the throne once again at some point after the divinely appointed successors of God inherit the throne and the rule, mainly Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam. And then at that time afterwards, Imam al-Mahdi and the Mahdis, which Jesus appears as one of those rightly guided successors of Imam al-Mahdi and of the Qa'im, he rises and he rules the earth from the throne in this physical universe, thanks to the coup d'etat that is established by the character of the Qa'im alongside with his companions, those 313 and the 10,000 warriors, and then later it grows to be 124,000 or 144,000 prophets and messengers and saints, the righteous men and women that return, that reincarnate into this world in order that they overthrow the entire planet. And and it's interesting because Iblis is, one of his names is Lucifer. He's like the light bearer, the light bringer. And there is a narration that states that he is stabbed through his chest, through his back, with a spear that's made out of light. And so in the very end of it all, the light bearer is actually, he's a bringer of darkness. And that's what he's brought over this world, over this past 10,000 years. And so the creator of the physical universe is toppled. And there's a new father of creation that rises to the throne, a new archangel that is very beloved by the people, and the people, they probably call him Father too because they love him so much. And he rules in the place of the old one and establishes a clear pathway for all of the prophets and messengers that were killed by Iblis. This time they get to reincarnate and be the ones that rule. And that's what our mission is right now. Our mission is to eliminate evil and to assassinate the devil and to establish justice and equity on the earth. And that's the promise of God that was given to us. And that's what's taking place in this Tao. And we invite everybody to join us in this pivotal moment, in this uprising against the devil, in this revolution against Satan, because his day has come and it's over for him. It's totally over. The time is up and we are looking for him. He's being hunted right now, and he knows he's being hunted, and he's very afraid of the fact that he's being hunted, and that's why he right now is rallying the world into chaos. And you see that there's wars and rumors of wars. You see that there's these birth pains that are taking place that the Bible spoke about. Time is speeding up. The economies are getting ready to collapse and crash, so that food is super expensive. All of this chaos that is taking place. This is chaos that's taking place at the hands of the devil, because he's kicking and he's screaming and he's punching and he's scratching and he's trying to do anything to fight that which is inevitable, and it becomes a punishment upon mankind because of their rejection of the truth. And the supremacy of God, the rulership of God, has finally come to replace the rulership of mankind. And if you think about it, Tiffany, there's something really important that I want to close out this episode with, in order to just clarify things for the people. There's a verse in the Quran, and there's many narrations also that speak about this kind of conversation that takes place between this very smart, wicked and sly prosecutor angel that's known as Iblis. Because on the day of judgment, people are going to blame Iblis. They're going to say, oh, we didn't know. We didn't know any better. He's the one who told us to do this. It's all his fault. And they're going to blame Iblis. And Iblis throws off the karma from himself. He throws off the blame. He shifts it. He says, I never had the power to make you do anything. The only thing that I did was I suggested and you accepted. You chose. And so, there's this kind of karmic law in the universe that states that if somebody is being oppressed, people are judged by their intentions. If somebody or some people are being oppressed, if they don't know the truth, if they're unwilling participants in a crime, they are not judged for that, right? The person who's behind the scenes, who forces them, who coerces them into participating in a particular crime, they're the ones that are responsible for it. So in other words, to simplify things, even in modern man's courts, if you have a person if somebody comes up to you and they hold a gun to your head and they force you to pull the trigger and shoot somebody else, you're not responsible. You were forced to do that, okay? And if you were standing on the side and you witnessed a tyrant murdering somebody else and you had no power to do anything, you're not responsible for that crime, right? And so what does the devil do? The devil puts the ultimate trap for mankind. He invents democracy because he wants people to elect, to choose to participate in the crimes themselves, because afterwards they have no excuse whatsoever, and he's not responsible for anything. All of the blame goes on them. He says, hey, I just presented some candidates. I just said, hey, would you like to vote for Obama, or would you like to vote for Trump? Would you like to vote for this person, or would you like to vote for that person? But you are the ones that actually chose. You guys are the ones that pledged allegiance to. You guys are the ones that participated and backed and funded all of these crimes. so actually I'm just innocent. I'm just a prosecutor. I just told God that you guys were bad, and he gave me enough time to prove the point that you guys are bad, but actually me, myself, I'm innocent. And that's how he views things in his own mind. But he's condemned. He is somebody who has already rebelled against God. He refused to prostrate. He set this plan. He's going to be held to account. And unfortunately, all those who continue to support his system will also be resurrected with him, and they will be held to account with him.
Thank you for pointing out that sobering reality. I mean, I hadn't really thought of it that way, but absolutely, it's so true. He is not guilty of coercion. He's actually just giving people suggestions, and they're the ones who are, they're choosing their own fate. And we see the fruit of that in the world today, and it's absolute chaos and darkness. And we still have that choice in front of us. We also have the choice to choose the alternative. We have the choice to choose the one who is going to do away with Satan and do away with the darkness and establish justice on the earth. And I appreciate that we have that opportunity. It's an incredible opportunity, and I, for one, choose to be on the side of the light. And I appreciate that you've given every person the knowledge, armed every person with the knowledge to make the right choice.
God bless you, Tiffany. Thank you so much for joining me, and inshallah we'll make a lot of more episodes together.
Thank you, Father.
What an absolutely diabolical plan that you would never have thought is attributed to the devil unless you hear it broken down in that way.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing, I mean, there's just so much to go over. I'm not sure if we're able to in this episode, but the very fact that Iblis actually at the end pretty much shifts the blame on the people. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, you cannot blame somebody who didn't force you. You cannot, I mean, if somebody's just suggesting something to you, then you only have your own self to blame. And the fact that the Quran validates the statement of Iblis and does not even argue against Iblis in that Quranic verse that Abu Sodic read out, I think is a big proof for the people that, look, I mean, you cannot pin the blame on the devil, because the devil put you in a trap. He put you in a system where you allowed yourself to make your own choices. He didn't make the choices for you. He didn't put a gun to your head and say, hey, go and belie and oppress Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, and go and oppress the people who believe in Abu Sodic, and hey, don't submit yourself to the man appointed by God. No, the human beings were the ones who committed this. The human beings are the ones to blame, and the devil has no blame except for the fact that he didn't prostrate to Adam. That is his only true blame.
No, it's huge. I mean, imagine, as Abu Sodic says there very eloquently, he says, Iblis just wanted to sit in the path and prove to God that he could misguide as many people as he could because they would listen to him. And he wanted to prove to God that man is not grateful, and that man is not sincere, and that man is not worthy. So he decided to not go around and say, be bad, be evil, but he decided to suggest, to basically make this idea in the minds and say, hey, why don't you just take part in this terrible system that I'll make this system, you know, where people are hurt, where people are oppressed, where people are not treating one another with honor and with dignity. I'll make that system, and all you need to do is approve of it, you know, and choose the lesser of two evils, right?
Again,
choose one of these two evil options. We'll even tell you that they're evil. We'll tell it to you.
It's actually insane.
Tell it to you right in front of your face.
It's
now
insane.
Pick the one that's a bit less evil than the other one. That's the advice of Satan. And then people do it, right?
Yeah.
They'll pick one. Now, aren't you kind of a part of it? Aren't you, supporting a system that you know is evil?
Exactly. I mean, Iblis, it's not like he said, hey, you have to vote, like it's forced upon you. He gave it out as a suggestion for the people. The people thought, okay, let's do it, actually. You know, it was something that he recommended, I guess you can say, but not something, or suggested.
He didn't impose on it.
He never, and that's the thing. What's crazy about Iblis is, if you actually check out everything that he's done, he's never compelled anybody or forced anybody to do anything. Everything has always been for the sake of suggestions, or you should do this, or this is a good idea. Why don't you do this? But you know, it's very interesting now to see the true face of religion when it comes to the teachings that we used to believe in. We used to believe that everything is the devil's fault. You know, he's making me do it. But actually, no, it's actually on us if we do anything wrong. And what's really interesting too, and I do have to highlight this because I was really, really taken aback by the idea that after the fall of Iblis and after the conquering of Iblis, there is going to be replaced after Iblis a new archangel, a new father of creation that takes Iblis's place. And you know, that's something that I really look forward to that day to
what is that?
To
What's
see
that about?
Yeah, to see the new father of creation in his throne. Someone who is pure, somebody who is better than Iblis, and somebody who is appointed by God. So that's going to be a day to behold for sure.
This is quite a prophecy. Let's see what it even means, because as time goes by, prophecies start to be fulfilled and the truth starts unraveling, and you see for yourselves, okay, this is how it was meant, this is what God meant by this, or there's a lot of revelation coming up, guys. And with the Qaim, it has been that way since the beginning of the journey. He's been fulfilling prophecy after prophecy, and we've been seeing with our own eyes in real time the fact that God is a faithful God who is true to his word, and everything that he promised is being fulfilled. So this is it. This is the arc of salvation. This is why we do what we do. This is why we sit here and we call you guys to look into the matter, because it is such an incredible matter. There is so much conviction in our hearts towards this, and we want you to have to live a life that's as fulfilling as we do, because how can you not feel fulfilled when you know that you are walking by the man who has the Spirit of God in him? We were saying earlier, you were having that conversation where people refuse to accept that a prophet could come after Jesus, or that there's a successor after Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his family, who's appointed by God, and he's a divine guide for mankind, an imam, a Mahdi. Muslims struggle with that, Christians struggle with that, but they don't struggle with the idea of looking for a scholar, a pastor, an ayatollah, so-called ayatollah, or any of these kind of religious figureheads, and they want to believe with all their hearts that God's Spirit is on them, that God has guided this individual, so I must follow them. They want to believe that Sistani is in touch with the Mahdi, with Imam al-Mahdi. They want to believe that this pastor or priest or the Pope is anointed with the Holy Spirit. They want to believe it, but they don't want to believe that anyone comes after Jesus or Muhammad. It doesn't make sense. That's contradictory. There is someone who comes after them. There's always someone in our midst who is from them. And that individual today is Abu Sodic. And look into the matter yourself. You'll be agreeing with us as well, if you're sincerely looking for the truth.
It's insane. It's the greatest trick, the greatest deception that the devil ever pulled. The greatest thing he ever pulled was that, look, you don't need the man appointed by God. You know, you have democracy. You have your local bishops who are just going to reconfirm everything that you already believe in anyway. And just stick to that. It's all good. And, you know, you're going to go to paradise, and everyone else, by the way, they're going to go to hellfire.
Yeah, then they add that too, right?
There's they add that too. Yeah, so it's just interesting to...
Nice.
Yeah, and it's just crazy to see how all this played out. And yeah, the devil really played the world. And I hope that the people are listening to that when I say that. The devil really played the world. You cannot tell me that the devil has no power and that Jesus died for your sins, or Muhammad brought the Quran, and that the Jews... I mean, look at the state of the world today and tell me that it's not ruled by the devil. Look at the state of oppression that's taking place and how many people starve to death, and the fact that death even still exists in the world proves that the person in charge of that, the person who is allowing all of this, is still in charge, and that's the devil.
There you go. Things have to change, Ardian.
They have to change.
And they will. There are a lot of good people in this world who want goodness and will not quit on that goal of wanting goodness, and we're going to work together. We're going to make sure that we take care of one another, and we're going to say humanity first. Humanity even before religion. If people are going to use religion as a weapon, you know what? Then we're going to put humanity before religion.
Exactly.
And we're going to make sure that is the goal, that's the priority. Taking care of human beings is the point of being alive. Thank you for tuning in this morning. This has been quite an episode. Really enjoyed
it. Was really
doing
amazing.
It with you, Ardian. Thank you so much for joining.
No, thank you for having me.
And we'll see you guys next time on Rise Up. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.